Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2020 Chevy Suburban, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Direct Connect Baseplate Kit with removable arms. But before we do that, why don't we check it out and make sure that this is something that's going to work for you. So before we get too carried away and just jump right into the baseplate and checking it out and seeing how it works and things like that, I figured it'd be useful just to kind of touch base and refresh ourselves on the main components that we're going to need to flat tow our Suburban down the road in the first place. So there's going to be a total of 5 main components needed to flat tow your Chevy down the road safely. First one's going to be the base plate, and that's going to provide us with a solid and reliable attachment point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. The tow bar is going to be the second component, and this is going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your vehicle to the back of your coach. The third main component will be safety cables, and these are pretty straightforward here. These are just there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. They're going to keep everything paired together. The fourth main component is going to be tow bar wiring, and what this is going to do is transfer the lighting signals from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Suburban. That way people know what's going on behind you and you'll be safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main component will be the supplemental braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your SUV whenever you hit the brakes in your coach, helping to bring you to a more complete and predictable stop. But with that out of the way, this is what your setup's going to look like whenever you're pulling it behind your motorhome. And honestly, for what it is, I think it looks pretty good. You don't have a ton of room to work up here, so I think it turned out pretty good actually. Everything's easy to see and easy to use, and it looks good. So what more can you really ask for? I will say something that you really want to pay attention to. There's several base plates available for this vehicle, and you really want to pay attention to what submodel you have. Is your truck 2 or 4 wheel drive? Does it have adaptive cruise control? Things like that. And you can find that information on the page. I believe it's under Tech Notes or Tech Tips, because certain base plates, are designed to work with Z71 models or 4-wheel drive models and so on. So I want to make sure you get the right thing that you need and that'll actually work with your vehicle. So spend a couple minutes, check that out to make sure you get squared away. So this is what the base plate's going to look like whenever you're not hooked up to your motorhome and you're just cruising around town or whatever it is you're doing. And I'm actually really impressed with it. Looks really good. It's just going to come out through some factory openings here where our tow hooks originally were. You're going to have to cut them out a little bit, but since they replaced the tow hooks more or less, nothing really looks out of place or out of the ordinary. Compared to some of the other base plates, a lot of them that are similar style to this are going to look pretty much the same. There's a couple that use a crossbar and things like that. To me, I'm really not too crazy about that, especially on a big, nice SUV like the Suburban here. So as far as the appearance goes, I think I'd give it an A+. It looks really good and blends in. Whenever you are ready to actually hook up to your motorhome and flat tow your vehicle, you want it to be easy. You don't want to have to do a bunch of crazy steps and everything else. And with this setup here, it doesn't really get much more simple. That's partly due to the fact that it uses these removable arms. So when you're ready to hook up, you're going to take the arm, put it into the base plate, rotate it about a quarter turn, and it's going to lock in. Same thing with this one over here. And now with these in, that's going to give us an attachment point. That way we can connect our tow bar to it. So whenever you're ready to hook your tow bar up, you're just going to take the ends of it, line it up with the base plate. And since these are quick connect type setups, you're going to take your pin, push that through, line up the other pin, lock it down. You do the other thing to the other side, and the base plate is going to work with Roadmaster tow bars, most of them, and You can use other tow bars as well. A lot of times you can pick up adapters that'll allow different manufacturer tow bars to pair up with the Roadmaster baseplate. So if that's your case, you can find that stuff here at etrailer. And one thing that I want to mention, the safety chain openings, the holes are pretty small, so they don't come with, it doesn't come with these D-links. The holes are pretty small, and with this being such a heavy truck, most of the time you're going to have a pretty heavy duty safety cable like this one. And a lot of those the clamps here, the clasps, are going to be really large and have a hard time getting it in. So you may want to end up picking up something like this, kind of, you know, easier to get in the main hole, and then gives you a bigger area to work with to get your safety chains connected to. As far as the installation goes, believe it or not, it's really not too bad. Being such a big vehicle, everything's pretty easy to get to, pretty easy to work with. You do have to take your front fascia off. Don't let that scare you. It's really not too bad. There's only a handful of fasteners, and it came off pretty easy, a lot easier than I expected. So pretty straightforward. You are gonna have to drill one hole, not really a big deal. You know, so I'd say it's safe to say if you're somewhat mechanically inclined, probably set aside the better part of half a day, something like that. So as long as you stay focused, really shouldn't give you a ton of issues. But speaking of that, why don't we go ahead and pull into the garage and put it on together now. To begin our installation, we're gonna be here at the front of our truck and gonna pop the hood, and we need to remove the radiator cover here. So on each half of it, we're gonna have a total of 6 push pin style fasteners that we need to remove. To get these out, I like to use a combination of a flathead screwdriver and a trim tool. So you're gonna pry up on the head, then you're able to pry the base of it out. I'm gonna do the same thing to get the other 5 out. And I want to mention, from this point on, anything we do to one side of our vehicle, we're also going to do to the other side, because it'll be all set up the same way. So I'll just continue to work across here until I get the rest of these out. So once you have all those removed, we can simply just lift up on our radiator cover and set it off to the side. And on each side, we're gonna have 3 10mm head bolts we're gonna pull out. So grab our socket, get those removed. Then if we continue on towards the passenger side of our vehicle, we're gonna have an electrical harness. This one here, you need to disconnect that. Not a lot of room to work, so I think I'm just gonna pry up on that to release it. And then we can pull out on this red tab. This one's pretty sticky, there we go. Pop that out, and you can push down on the center. To get that separated. So now if we move to our front wheel wells along the front edge, we're gonna have I believe 5 7mm head screws that run down along that we need to remove. So we'll grab our socket and get everything pulled out here. So if we look along the bottom edge of our car now, we're gonna have 2 10mm head bolts. We get those pulled out. And then in our case, we actually have a push pin type fastener. You may have a bolt there, maybe something like this. Either way, it needs to come out. So I'll grab my tool here and pry this out. So right where we just took those other 2 bolts out, if we just kind of look from the back towards the front, we're gonna have another 10mm head bolt right there that we're gonna get removed. At this point, we can remove our actual skid plate here. So it's going to be held in place with 4 15mm head bolts. So we're going to have these openings, and a little ways inside there will be the head of the bolt. So we'll pull those out. With these, you'll definitely need an extension. Probably a 6-inch extension, it should do the trick. And then we're gonna have 2 back here. So once you take this last one out, make sure you got a hold of the skid plate. This will be the last thing holding it up. And then we can let it down and set it off to the side. So where the skid plate was, along the front edge here, we're gonna have 2 10mm head bolts. You need to get both of these pulled out. What we need to do now is release a couple of tabs behind our grill. So there's one on each side, like in this area here. And these are gonna be a little tricky to get to, especially if you have this style of grill. In the instructions, it looks like the other type of grill has a lot more room to work, but what you're gonna have to do is take a long flathead screwdriver like this and actually kind of pry up on the tab and pull out a little bit on the fascia. So bear with us here. This is gonna be kind of tricky to see, so we'll do our best. But that plastic piece, what needs to happen is we need to get underneath of it and lift it up. Lift it up enough to clear this piece, and while we're doing that, pull back until it stays on top, if that makes sense. So see if we can do this like this. If not, I might have to figure something else out here. Moving back to our wheel well, I did miss a fastener. If you peel back your wheel well liner some, here at the top, you're gonna have a 7mm head screw. Go ahead and get that pulled out. Now with the next set of hands, you can actually remove our fascia. So I put some painter's tape along the edges here just so we don't scratch anything up. And in the center, if you just kind of lift up on the grill, it'll kind of release like that. And then we can come to our corners here. And you're just gonna pull outward on the corners. That one actually just popped right off. A lot of times you'll have to kind of work it around. We're gonna get that going on each side though. Looks like we don't have anything to disconnect as far as electrical goes, so we'll go ahead and just set this off to the side, out of the way. Now what we're able to do is remove our bumper beam here. So on each side of it, we're gonna have 3 fasteners, and they're gonna be a 15mm head bolt. And they're kind of recessed in there a little bit. I'll go ahead and pull these out. I already have the other side off, so when you take your last one off, make sure you kind of have a hold of it. And there's actually something hanging it up here. Okay, so yeah, you just kind of have to lift up, kind of cock it like this, and then that'll let it slide off. Now we can remove our tow hooks. So you're gonna have a bolt that passes through completely. So I'll hold the head of it with a wrench. And then on this side, we're gonna have a nut. I'll use an 18mm socket. Get these out of the way. And then on the inside here, we're gonna have another bolt. This one though, it's not gonna have a nut on it. It's a regular bolt, so we'll take an 18 again. pull this out, and that'll allow us to remove our tow hook, and we'll set this off to the side, and these will not be getting reinstalled. So now we can take our base plate here. These are side specific, so make sure to check your instructions. One quick way to tell is the notch there. That's going to face towards the center of our vehicle. So what we're going to do for now is just take a long bolt and slide it through. And we'll just take a nut and just get this to where it feels good in there. It's kind of resting where you want it to be. And just tighten this down by hand, and we're gonna kind of use this as a guide to drill a hole. If you remember where we took just the bolt out, we need to drill a hole so it comes through this side. So keeping this here will just help us keep everything straight whenever we're drilling. So using this hole as a guide, we'll take our bit and make sure we're getting a good straight shot at it, and we're just gonna drill through to the other side. So with that hole drilled out, I went ahead and just took our bolt back out of there. And what you're gonna do, take both these long bolts, put on red Loctite on the threads. All the hardware that you use to secure the base plate will get that Loctite. And if you don't have any, you can grab it here at etrailer. Then you're gonna take this spacer deal, slide the bolts through it. You want that U shape to face up. You're gonna take these and feed them through, making sure that they go through the frame, through the base plate, and out of the other side of our frame. On the other side where the bolts come through, you're then going to take your safety chain hooks, slide them over. You want those to bend out. And then we're going to take our split lock washers, slide those over the bolts, come back with the nut, and we'll just get these hand tight for now. And then if you look on the bottom of our frame rail through this small hole there, the base plate is actually going to line up with it, and there's some threads in there. You're going to take the 5/8 bolt, put on a split lock washer, and then this huge flat washer. Get your red Loctite on the threads in order to get this one started as well. Once all the hardware is in place and hand tight, we'll come back and tighten down the big bolt first. Then we can move over to our side bolts. We'll take a wrench and socket and snug everything down. Once the bolts are tight, we'll come back and torque everything to the amount in the instructions. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can grab one here at etrailer, or a lot of times you go to your local auto parts store and they'll have one there available to rent. So once you have the other side of your base plate done, we can start getting things back together. So for now, I'm going to take our bumper beam and just get this reinstalled the opposite way that we removed it. So now what we can do is come over to our fascia, and we need to trim it up a little bit. That way it'll clear our base plate. And if you look, we're gonna have these tabs that kind of hang down. And what you can do is kind of bend them back and forth to kind of crease them. And I'm just going to come in with a razor knife and just kind of cut along that crease. And actually, it's pretty easy to do. Not a whole lot of material there. So that trimmed off, do the same thing to the other side. Now at the next set of hands, we can take our fascia and get it back into position. So this might take some finesse just to get it around our base plate and everything else. Sure, it'll be a little tight, that's normal, but just take your time, get everything lined up, and everything should snap back together pretty good. So trying to get the fascia on just wasn't happening. The cutouts that we trimmed, we tried it every which way. We could just not get the base plate to go through there. So I did have to kind of pull everything back off and trim out some more. And this is what I came up with. Hopefully it'll work. I got a really good feeling it will. But at the top, I just kind of cut a half moon type deal in it there. And then on that bottom side down here where the safety chain goes, I took out just a little bit more material there as well. So I think we should be in pretty good shape now, and we'll try to get the fascia on again. So with them cut out, we'll go ahead and give this another shot here, and hopefully everything will line up this time. Oh yeah, nice.
Okay, here we are with Gary and Phillips, and we're going to go over their flat toe setup with them today, show them how everything works and where we installed everything on the Suburban. So it's a 2020 Suburban.
C71.
Yeah, so really nice truck. So first of all, we've got the system all put on here, so I'll show you where everything is. So the guys hide things pretty well, and they do a lot of good work as far as putting wire loom all over everything and making it all really nice. So this is your battery disconnect, and that's the part that there's a momentary switch inside. We'll show you here in just a minute. And then this here is your fuse for your braking system. So if the braking system's ever just not working, this is the first place to check.
Okay.
And you just pop the top off and the fuse is inside there. And then the Air Force One is over here in the secondary battery tray location. So some of these trucks are diesels, so they have a second battery location usually, but since you don't have the second battery and you have the gas motor, that's your Air Force One right there. It ties into your vacuum booster right here with this hose. And then that's the only thing that actually ties into any systems on the car is that vacuum right there for the vacuum booster. Everything else is just the braking system itself and power from the battery over there.
Okay.
So then inside the car here, I'll show you the breakaway or the switch for the solenoid. It's really hard to see, so I'm going to point at it, and then I'll let you get in here and look at it. It has a chrome bezel around it, so you'll be able to see it, but when you press it, you can kind of hear it.
I did,
Okay, so if you want to
And when you press
check it out there. So that's battery off. Everything in the truck went off.
Okay.
And you press it again and it's battery on.
Okay.
So that's that. And then on, if you want to fly in there, on the brake pedal, you'll see a big cylinder and a cable that pulls the brake pedal to the floor. And since you have adjustable pedals, always when you're setting up to tow, you want to adjust the pedals all the way out.
Okay.
That way the pedals, whenever they're adjusted to any other person at any place, it could never affect driving the car.
Okay.
So that's why we do it all the way out. And then other than that, we've got your tow bar and safety cables here. So we've got some really big safety cables because of the weight of the Suburban. And then the tow bar is pretty simple to use. When they're new, they're a little stiff to move. You move them like this. If you're going to store it, you can store it either way. Most people will grab a tow bar cover and just kind of get everything up in the cover and just leave it on the motorhome when they're camping. And then, you know, it'd be good to take it off and store it, like if you're not going to be going anywhere for a long period of time.
Right.
Just to keep it out of the sun and whatnot. This is your airline cable for your braking system, and here's your breakaway cable for the braking system. So we'll just go ahead and get it hooked up. I'll let you do that side, I'll do this side. Just pick it up, get it to where it'll swing down, and then just pull them apart. And then this pin comes out, and you want to always go your pin outside in so that your pin goes through here.
Outside to in.
Yeah. I guess before we get too far there, I'll show you over here. So to remove this, these when you're not towing and you're just driving around town, you just pull this pin and turn. So you just pull out on the pin, turn, and it'll pop right out.
All right.
And then to put it back in, you don't have to pull on the ring or anything. You just push it in and turn, and you feel it lock in. So that's good. And you always want these ears to the inside.
Okay.
And you just put it there. Go through there and make sure your snapper pin goes through there, and make sure this always snaps down. And you want to keep your fingers out of the way because that hurts.
Okay.
I've done that a lot of times on tractors. Then you've got your 6 round, and the only thing I want to point out there is there's a ridge. That ridge is always 12 o'clock.
Okay.
And that runs the lighting and gives you your brake signal for the braking system. And it runs through the tow bar here and goes to the 7-way and plugs right into the 7-way. And we've tested all that, made sure everything was working. The only other thing is the safety cables. Now this is a Blackhawk tow bar. And if you ever decide to tow a smaller vehicle, you can run the safety cables through this channel that's on here that this straight cables ran through. But since these cables are heavy duty for the weight of the Suburban, you're not going to be able to do that. And these hooks are awful large for the safety chain loops that they give you here on the base plate.
Okay.
So we got you these 10,000 pound quick links to attach there. So you just put them in there. And hang on a second, I'm sorry. So sometimes I'm not thinking. You're supposed to cross these cables just in case there ever is a breakaway of the tow bar and the cables are still hooked up. It'll kind of keep the tow bar off the ground and keep it from digging into the ground and causing you a problem. So always make sure that side goes to this side and this side goes to that side. That was my fault. I should have remembered that. And you don't have to tighten these up with a wrench or anything, just finger tights. Really good. They'll actually probably be a little too tight if you run into any rain or road grime or anything.
Right.
You might need a little pair of pliers to undo them.
Okay.
Then you've got your air line there. I wanted to show the plastic caps. So you got a small cap for the front of the car that you always want to keep on here when you're not towing,
Okay.
and a large cap for this end of the cable for when you're not towing. That keeps all the dirt out of the air system, and then you can stow your cord somewhere. But to go on, it's just like an air compressor chuck there, and then you can do the front side of here. And this is one thing I always recommend getting a second set of these. They're just rubber caps for the Air Force, SMI Air Force One.
Okay.
And they just keep the dirt out of the system. And then that's it, except for the breakaway switch, which is right here.
Okay.
And so this is not all the way out yet, so these are plenty. You don't have to worry about wrapping them around the tow bar or anything. They're not going to drag the ground. If you do see them stretching out to where they do get that way, you could throw it around the tow bar one time. Just make sure it's not going to get involved here where it's pivoting and pinch the cables. So on the breakaway, it's just this right here. And this little wire cable needs to always stay on there with that plastic thing to keep the two contacts separated so that it doesn't apply the Air Force One brakes. And this little box here stores some air in case of a breakaway, and then that'll apply the brakes. And then otherwise there's a tank underneath that's tied into your air brakes on the coach that actually works the Air Force One system, so you're not using the air for stopping the coach to stop the car. It's actually auxiliary air that's pushed into that tank while you're just driving along. So, and then yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it for setting up and getting ready to go. Yeah, so that's putting the truck in neutral is always something you always want to use your owner's manual on. So we don't give instruction on that, But we'll go through it with you with your owner's manual, and that's different for every vehicle. So we'll do that here in a minute, right before you take off.
All right.
And
Very good.
that should do it.
And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Direct Connect Baseplate Kit with removable arms on our 2020 Chevrolet Suburban.